For the last 500 years, the existence of England as a separate nation has been bound up with the acceptance of the Hebraic code of morality, not because that code had any universal application, but because climate and other reasons had combined to place the England of the Middle Ages in the same position as that occupied by the people of ancient Judea. The protection of the Hebraic race consisted in the desert and the mountain. That of England has always consisted in the sea. But whether the march be on the mountain or on the mountain wave, some militant force to hold the frontier was ever needed, behind the mountain and beyond the sea. The Jews were neighbors, but for the deserts and mountains, of two much more numerous peoples, the Egyptians and Persians. The English, but for the sea, were equally, still are, neighbors of the French and Germans. Now, the present population of the United Kingdom is equal to that of France, and is not dangerously inferior to that of Germany. But this has not been so before. In the times of the Plantagenets, England had but one fighting man against France's five, and the 100 Years' War was practically the one Englishman backed up by a couple of decadent Frenchmen. Burgundian and Breton, or Burgundian and Gascon, or Breton and Gascon against the other free Frenchmen. It was only by dividing that we conquered, and were always terribly in danger from the enormous preponderance of fighting force possessed by a united France. Between 1356, the date of Crécy, and 1793, the date of the last war with France, conditions did not vary greatly. In the latter year, the French still outnumbered us by more than 2-1. This was the abiding and prime danger of those 437 years, and there were interludes of the Germanic danger, as from 1558 to 1600, when Spain from time to time obtained command of the military force of Central Europe and the Teutonic peoples. The danger from their armada was the danger of being outnumbered. Philip II, drawing upon a fighting population more than 5 times that of Great Britain, and Teutonico-Spanish coalitions against us being always possible until internecine religious wars splintered Central Europe into fragments, which even 1866 and 1870 failed wholly to reunite. Thus, England has only now emerged into conditions favorable to a real civilization and a high moral code. For 437 years at least, there has been a necessity for increasing the population, a necessity on which the national existence depended. Necessity makes its own laws and makes its own morals. It dictates what form religion shall assume and decides what classes of a religious code shall be enforced or left inoperative by the civil law. We accordingly find that any contract in restraint of marriage during that period of defective population, as compared with our neighbors, has been held invalid at law as contrary to public policy. Salus populi suprema lex. We find that second marriages have always been allowed, that a celibate priesthood has been legally discouraged, that marriages, however much of affection, are null at law unless consummated. In other words, that not love or fidelity, but a physical act is of essence to the contract. Yet the sense of humor always inherent in the English people has kept them from such curious exhibitions of nasty-mindedness and truculence as marked the Jewish laws of family marriages, and as expressed themselves in the Levitical books, in such passages as habeo duas filias, vobit placeriet, Genesis 9:8, and Ingrede cum Dominus, Genesis 38, 8-10. Semitic influences, however, continue to secure that the work containing these cold-blooded incitements to phallic filthiness is actually allowed to be published at the leading seats of learning, as well as in the metropolis. Even health and science, when their teaching clashed with this desire for population, have had to go to the wall, and despite the increase of insanity resulting, the marriage of first cousins is permitted. So jealous has the state been of any restraint, even that of hygiene, on marriage. That the next century, at all events, will have to be lived for Englishmen under wildly different circumstances than the last 5 have been, is a point which hardly requires to be enforced. Time and circumstances have conspired to remove the dangers which affected the past. Even 100 years ago, either France or Germany would have conquered English twice over if valor was merely equal. We had frightful arrears of fighting strength to make up. Today, even without our colonies, we are too numerous for this to happen, and it is probable that we should be assisted by England overseas. The problem, therefore, is shifted, and from the dangers foreseen in the Middle Ages in England, from the dangers to which the Jews eventually succumbed, we have now to turn and confront the new series of perils involved in the people exceeding the means to live contentedly. Again will necessity affect our laws, our morals, the enforcement or non-enforcement of different sections of religious code. It will not be all gain, no change ever is, but we can at least make the best of it, as can the wise of all changes. Wherefore, just as the flower of the early and imperfect civilization was in what we may call the old chivalry, or the exaltation of the youthful feminine ideal, so the flower of the adult and perfect civilization will be found in the new chivalry, or the exaltation of the youthful masculine ideal. The time has arrived when the eternal desire for love, which nature has implanted in the breast of man, requires to be satisfied without such an increase in population as has characterized the past. The methods connected with the agreeable names of Bradlaugh, Besant, and Drysdale need no notice here. We need not consider the degree of viciousness involved in what is known as French vice. It will suffer for us that it is essentially bourgeois, that it is not only lacking in the aesthetic element, but is directly antipathetic here too. To the aesthete, a smudged flower is worse than no flower at all, and the intrusion of chill precaution upon the heat of passion can only result in that lukewarm condition which aestheticism rejects as forcibly as ever orthodoxy did Laodicea. The new ideal, therefore, will be one which unites true fancies and a lofty aspiration with a freedom from the 2 classes of evils already considered. The direction in which it is to be found is indicated by the natural tendencies which secure the survival of the fittest. The animal ideal is to secure immortality by influencing the body. The spiritual is that addition by which we are differentiated from the animal. And the law of evolution is addition, is change. Wherefore, the human animal to which the spiritual has been added will eventually find the line of proper and ultimate evolution is emphasizing that which has been added. The men of most influence on their fellows will be those who are the most spiritual, not those who are the most animal. At the same time, the majority will always lag behind the more advanced type, a provision by which the perpetuation of the species is adequately secured. For 5 centuries in England, the necessity that the race should increase and multiply has been paramount. But these 5 centuries of assistance have now secured the result, and we need at the present time no more than to not go back in numbers, at the same time that we greatly need to increase in the average of wealth. Il faut trafiquer de notre superflu. The new chivalry, then, is also the new necessity. Happily, it is already with us. The advanced, the more spiritual types of English manhood already look to beauty first. In the past, the beauty has been conditioned and confined to such beauty as could be found in some fair being capable of increasing the population. The condition italicized is now for the intelligent removed. The new chivalry, therefore, will not ask that very plain question of the marriage service, will it lead to the procreation of children? It will rest content with beauty, God's outward clue to the inward paradise. No animal consideration of mere sex will be allowed to intrude on the higher fact. A beautiful girl will be desired before a plain lad, but a plain girl will not be considered in the presence of a handsome boy. Where boy and girl are of equal outward grace, the spiritual ideal will prevail over the animal, and the desire of influencing the higher mind, the boys, will prevail over the old desire to add to the population. The higher form of influence will be chosen. The gain in human happiness will be direct and immediate. It has been obvious in the past that the praiseworthy attempts of women to be beautiful have in the next generation been half abolished by the want of such attempt in their husbands. Thus the human animal in England got no forwarder in physical beauty. But the new chivalry inducing boys to be beautiful as well as girls will remedy this. The whole species will move on, and a type of higher beauty will be evolved. The gain in human intelligence will be direct, for love will impart with the eagerness of joy all its most treasured intellectual acquisitions, all its experiences of life. It will not fear to bear its errors to loving eyes, and will not grudge even shame, if so be it may save the beloved from the like. As in Sparta, so once more will the lover be the inbreather. Espenulos, the beloved, the listener, ates. A royal road to learning will be found. The gain in human physique will be direct. For the carelessness of fathers, the sexual impossibilities of mothers and sisters, the more than indifference of brothers, the watchful and devoted discipline of the lover will be substituted. The boy will find exactly the words, the cautions he requires, the incentives which best stimulate in the converse of the lover still young and strong enough to preach by act, and finding, as in Sir Frederick Leighton's admirable canvas, no greater glory than in guiding younger and well-loved hands to the mark. That comparisons are not popular has been affirmed by many authorities, and in cases where evolution is working out its silent, inevitable course, they are also unnecessary. There are, however, two matters wherein the new chivalry inspires us with a new hope. It is evident that in the old chivalry there was always a certain absence of free will. In other words, its essential element, a refusal to take by force and for aught than love, was at best imperfect. A married woman blessed with children is cajoled by nature itself, as it were, into tolerating the husband for the sake of the children, even were but for the Baconian hostages to fortune. No such tolerance would be possible. And the marriage contract adds for the same sake a proviso, which is not of chivalry or even, except for the good of the community as expressed in increase of population, of common sense. Till death us do part is the phrase. Till love us do part is the obvious logic of the situation. The new chivalry imposes no irksome or fatuous ties. It is genuine, or it is nothing. Whereas where love upholds its banner, the heathen may rage in vain, and it is so strong that should its own hands dig its grave, the wide world's power and pity shall not save. The chief drawback is that under the new chivalry, all the plots of the French dramatists would disappear. Lovers, while loving, would not care for the world outside, and when they ceased to love, there would be neither incongruity or scandal in their going apart. A gain to the world of a new nature, but all the more important in an age when poverty of purse, not of population, is the danger, exists in the decrease of idleness involved by the new ideal. No woman wants to work. Every girl of the least personal attractiveness nourishes the hope of being kept in idleness. Above a certain class, the proviso by a husband is added. But the new lovers will both work, and will be the happier for both working. The newer and intenser love will see its way to avoid the separation of hours, of interests, and of resources, which is the inevitable destiny of 99 married couples out of every 100. The desire of the male to express itself in action will be fully satisfied in each case. Age will make no difference. The ideal partnership, indeed, will more frequently than not be accomplished, the elder having the greater capital to balance the less physical energy, the younger having greater power of physical endurance, the younger, too, having greater powers of physical endurance under due direction. Had it but this single recommendation, the new ideal would still be adding enormously to the wealth and happiness of the country. This is at best a brief and superficial note on a vast subject. The stimulating experiences of ancient Hellas, the wisdom of Sadi and Omar Khayyam have not been drawn upon for a single analogy or argument. There are, however, two facts, one suggested by nature and one by religion, which in their direct and immediately bearing on the issues already raised cannot possibly be overlooked. The one is that of the unique aid to be rendered through unity of sex. This is nature's witness to the new chivalry. Be a man ever so devotedly attached to his wife, there will always remain a great gulf fixed. Were this gulf unbridgeable by humanity, it were easy to bear it. But far from this being so, it is a beaten highway trod by every other woman. The slatternly charwoman may tread it, or the painted lays of the Haymarket, but the husband may not. The lover is shut out. Nature's and most intimate and instructive bond of sympathy is denied to the old love. It is opened to the new. Of companionship also there is much to be said. Here it is enough to ask, how much do ordinary engaged couples, how much even do husband and wife, see of each other? How much may not lovers see if man and youth, if youth and boy? The joys of Palestra, of the river, of the hunt, and of the moor, the evening tent pitching of campers out, and the exhilaration of the early morning swim, for one pleasure of life and physical delight in each other's presence, touch, and voice which man and women ordinarily share, it is not too much to say that the new chivalry has 10. Intimacy of constant companionship, of physical and personal knowledge, is also a power of help and aid which cannot be put into words. And the other fact which we have in mind as essential to what has been said is that of the highest ideal of all. For man is still God's dearest minion, says Sylvester. In the development of adolescent powers, both of body and of soul, the highest ideal is surely set. That the most beautiful is not always the most intellectual is also the fault of our negligence and misunderstanding in the past, when it was wholly by the intellectual that man made his way, and moral differences were not weighed against absolute cleverness. Canon Liddon once said to a friend, "Well, the devil is exceedingly clever, and beautiful people are sometimes quite stupid, but cleverness and beauty only come together where the third goodness is there also." The mind of adolescent manhood, being the development stage of potentially greater powers, must needs be capable, under stimulants and guidance, of sweeter and fuller flower than that of girlhood, sweet as is that flower. And while no woman wishes to be loved for her intellect, youth is proud to be helped to learn. Nor is handsome youth less disposed towards that knowledge than youth which is not handsome. The possibility of having to fight life's intellectual and physical battles side by side and shoulder to shoulder is full of new inspiration, an inspiration which the old ideal could not take to itself, which the old chivalry never knew. When love enters, when possibility will become desire, and like will be drawn to like by each attempting to attain, for the sake of greater worthiness, that to which the other is the best. That the tenderness of elder for younger, of one who has endured for him that has yet to endure, of the strong for the weak, the developed for the developing, is retained in all fullness, while these other things are added, is perhaps that note which gives its highest value to the new chivalry.